Well, hello there, and welcome once again to Ask a Lawyer. This is CP24. My name, John Scholes. Joining me momentarily, employment lawyer Lior Samfiru from EmploymentLawyer.ca. Right off the top, the contact information, good to have. Phone number 1-855-821-5900 to reach Lior. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. There's also a website we call PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. You'll see that in action a little later on in the show. We're going to get some phone calls from our viewers, and we always have a main topic in the second segment, and it is going to be wrongful dismissal, what you need to know. It's a very busy topic, and you got to know this stuff. We'll educate you momentarily, but lots to get through, Lior. We always start off with the week that was, or case of the day, to get everybody warmed up and comfortable. What do you got for me this week?
Well, I can tell you, John, that over the last week, I've gotten even more employment questions than I usually do. I think a lot of people's jobs are being affected by tariffs, by AI, by the state of the economy, by interest rates, you name it. A lot of things are happening. And if your job is affected, what I want you to know is this. Even though there could be all these external forces out there, the laws don't go anywhere. You still have the same entitlements to severance and other rights under the law. In fact, when it comes to severance, I will say, if you're losing your job now, you may be owed even more severance than usual because it may be more difficult to find another job. That's why on this show, we cover all these important topics, is you need to know and you need to understand. Your employer may not tell you your legal rights. In fact, I guarantee you that they're not going to advise and educate you on your legal rights. Maybe they even hope that you don't know your legal rights. Well, we don't care. On the show, we tell you what you need to know if your job is impacted by tariffs, if your hours are being cut, if you're put on a temporary layoff, if you're being mistreated or bullied, or your job maybe is changing. We try to cover all these topics and much more every single week because it's so important that you know your rights. But it's a 30-minute show, and this show is going to come to an end, and there's still going to be topics we would have liked to cover. Well, no worries. You can reach me in the office so we can have a private discussion about your specific situation so I can answer your questions and provide the help to make sure that your rights are enforced. We'll give you that contact information, of course, throughout the show on your screen, so stay tuned for that. But case of the day, where I always like to start. Now, to tell you about this case of the day, I got to give you a bit of the history of this person's employment here. So this individual had worked in a senior role for about 8 years. A few years ago, he was let go because of restructuring. He was provided a fair severance. He signed it, and everything's fine. Fast forward a few months after that, company calls him up and says, some things have changed. We'd like for you to come back to work. Would you like to? He says, yeah, glad to. I haven't found another job. So he went back to work. This was 2 years ago. Well, very recently, last week, in fact, he is actually let go. One of those victims of AI and automation, he was let go. And the company says, well, you're a 2-year employee because previously you worked for 8 years, but we paid you severance for that. So you're a 2-year employee. We're going to pay you severance as a 2-year employee. This person called me really just wanting to understand, is he really a 2-year employee, or does he have more years of service and therefore is owed more severance? Well, here's the answer. The answer is he wasn't a 2-year employee. He was a 10-year employee. The previous 8 years that he worked for the company did count. Even though he received severance for those years, they still count. You can't erase prior service that way. The company did not have him sign an employment agreement when he came back that erased that prior years of service. Potentially they could have done that, but they didn't. So when they brought him back after being off for a few months, they inherited, if you will, those previous 8 years of service. So now when he's let go, he's being let go as a 10-year employee, and he's going to be owed 12 to 14 months of severance. So he's going to do really well. But the reason I wanted to mention this case here on the case of the day is because of the fact that that past service can rarely be erased. So you may have had other years of service. Maybe your employment wasn't continuous. Maybe you worked for a while and then you quit and came back, or you were let go and then rehired. There's a really good possibility that right now the company has to give you credit for all those years of service, even if it wasn't continuous. And of course, the more years of service you have, the more severance you get. So that's yet another reason, John, why it's so vital to contact us if you lost your job. You may be having more severance or service years than you realize.
Always an educational start, Lior, setting the table nicely. We got time before we break to get into a phone call from one of our viewers. Let's do that right now.
I work for a financial institution, and I've been in a management role for 13 years. A few months back, I got a warning letter because of a response to a Instagram post. And now my boss is trying to convince me to take on a different role. He doesn't think I'm suited for the role anymore. Is that something that I have to consider? Telling me that I should take on more of an individual contributor role as opposed to a management role.
So, John, this employer wants to demote him. Instead of being a manager, being a non-manager. So, no, he does not have to consider that option. He can say, thanks, but no thanks. I'm fine where I'm at. I know I can do this job. I'm going to continue doing this job. Once the person does that, his employer has two options, or I guess three options. But the two main options is they can just back off and let him be to continue doing the job. Or maybe they say, well, too bad. We're just going to demote you. We don't care what you think or want. We're going to decide for you that we're demoting you. You're no longer a manager. Well, if the company does that, if they demote him unilaterally, wait a second, not allowed. That would be what we call a constructive dismissal. That means that he could treat that as a termination and get severance because his employer doesn't have a right to do that. So the last thing he would have to consider in that situation is how much severance is he owed if the company demotes him, if it's a constructive dismissal. So for that, we're going to go and use our severance calculator to assess entitlements. You'll find the severance calculator at PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca. So let's see what we get for him. He's a financial manager who has been there for 13 years. He's 54 years of age. If he's let go or if he's constructively dismissed through a demotion, the severance for him would be 16 to 20 months, as you see on your screen. Significant entitlements. You could do the same thing if you want to know how much severance you're owed, either if you've lost your job or if you're curious or maybe you're worried about losing your job. You can find out in seconds for free and anonymously. Just go to PocketEmploymentLawyer.ca.
Lior, thank you for that. We got to get into a short break here. We'll get our main topic on the other side. Wrongful dismissal, what you need to know. That is coming up right here on Ask a Lawyer. Stay with us.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
And welcome back to Ask a Lawyer on CP24. John Scholes here, Lior Samfiru as well. Employment Lawyer, reachable all the time, anytime. The phone number, 1-855-821-5900. Ask at EmploymentLawyer.ca. Use that QR code as well. It is that time of the show where we get to our main topic. And this week it is wrongful dismissal, what you need to know. Right into it, Lior. Wrongful dismissal doesn't mean you've been let go for the wrong reason, does it?
Yeah, that word wrong in wrongful dismissal can confuse people. I feel my termination was wrong. They didn't have a good reason. They weren't honest with me. They were lying. So that's a wrongful dismissal, isn't it? Unfortunately, no. A wrongful dismissal generally has nothing to do with the reason or even the way you were let go. A wrongful dismissal really means you've been let go and you have not been offered or paid proper severance. So a wrongful dismissal is all about that severance. Even if the company lied and gave you a false reason, that's not a wrongful dismissal if they paid severance. On the other hand, if the company is completely honest and gave you the best reason and it's legitimate, but they didn't pay you proper severance, that is a wrongful dismissal. 90% of people, when they're let go, have been wrongfully dismissed, because 90% of people are not offered proper severance. So there's a massively good chance that if you've been let go, doesn't matter who you work for or how long you've worked for, that you've just been wrongfully dismissed. So it's all about that severance, that compensation. The good news is it's not difficult to resolve a wrongful dismissal. It's not difficult to get you the proper severance that you're owed. It starts by reaching out, by calling or emailing, so we can have that discussion, assess what you're owed, and then get working on getting you what you're owed.
The second thing you need to know, Lior, for our viewers is a wrongful dismissal can trigger or at least ignite a significant change in your employment, can trigger that wrongful dismissal, right, if it's a big enough one.
So the idea of a wrongful dismissal, of course, is you're let go without proper severance. Well, there's another concept called constructive dismissal, which is a form of wrongful dismissal. And that is when a company changes the terms of your employment. That's not something they're allowed to do, which means they owe you severance. If they haven't paid that severance, then that's a wrongful dismissal. So really, an employer cannot make these significant changes to the terms of your employment. They can't just reduce your pay, change your hours, demote you, change your work location. If they do, that's a wrongful dismissal. A name for that more specific, again, constructive dismissal, which means you are owed severance. The same severance you would be owed in a regular wrongful dismissal. So constructive dismissal, all it is, John, is a type of wrongful dismissal.
You know, we often hear that time frame of 2 years when it comes to employment law, Lior, and you have up to 2 years to pursue a wrongful dismissal claim, yeah?
Yeah, so if you're let go to, and you, as I said, you're probably looking at a 90% chance that you've been wrongfully dismissed. You have 2 years from the time of dismissal to pursue that. Now, that is a strict timeline. It's not 2 years and a day or, about 2 years. It's 2 years. That also means, by the way, that severance deadline that you've been given, it's nonsense because you have 2 years to pursue it, not just until Friday, which is, what that deadline is going to say. I still don't think you should wait. Every week I speak with people that when they've been let go, that was more than 2 years ago. They didn't know. Now they want to pursue their full severance and it's too late. Remember, that severance can be as much as 24 months pay. You don't want to walk away from that. You don't want to make assumptions that your severance offer is fair because it's likely not fair. So that severance deadline doesn't really matter. It doesn't take away your rights on that Friday. You have up to 2 years. Of course, I wouldn't wait. As soon as you're let go, with cause, without cause, big company or small company, let's talk. Let's make sure that you get what you're owed.
Main topic, as always, covered off nicely, Lior. But before we break, I think we got time for another viewer phone call. So let's get into that, shall we?
One of my coworkers, I assumed he was having a bad day, just started yelling at me, saying that I wasn't pulling my weight. There is a three-man crew. I went to the supervisor. I let him know about it. And I said, I don't know what his problem is. And then it happened again the following week. Manager's office, I let them know what's the problem and get it out on the table, find out. They did nothing about it.
Oh.
So this person did the right thing. He was mistreated or bullied in the workplace. Not appropriate, not at all okay. And he told his employer that's what he's supposed to do because his employer has an obligation to deal with that. Now, this employer dropped the ball. So here's what I would tell him to do. Tell your employer in writing. Your employer has to deal with that. They have to investigate and take measures to fix it. So now I want him to follow up in writing to say, here's what's been happening. I told you about this before. Nothing was done. Please do something about it to make sure it doesn't happen again in writing. Because you don't want your employer to say later on, oh, we didn't know, you didn't tell us, you weren't clear. Put that in writing. At that point, an employer with any bit of common sense is going to take that seriously and deal with it. If they still ignore it, if they still don't do anything, despite you putting in writing, man, oh man, that's a problem for the employer. That could be a constructive dismissal. That could be a violation of occupational health and safety legislation. In some cases, it could even be a human rights violation. It's wrong, it's illegal. But put that in writing, put that onus on the employer to investigate and take it seriously. And of course, employers, if you become aware of a harassment issue, a bullying issue, of a poison work environment, don't ignore it. You can't ignore it. Take it seriously, deal with it properly, and make sure that your employees are not subject to improper treatment in the workplace.
That said, Lior, it's time to take a short pause. On the other side of the break, we'll get into the disability part of the show, the other half of what the firm does. So stick around for that as we continue more Ask a Lawyer on CP24.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
And a quick break. We are right back at it here. Ask a Lawyer on CP24. We're going to bounce over to the disability part of the show now for a segment, but the reach out information is basically the same, right? The phone number is 1-855-821-5900. For this case, it's ask@disabilityrights.ca. Again, scan that QR code. And before we get into our viewer phone call and another follow-up question, Lior, just break it down briefly what your friends in the next cubicle over on the disability side do every week.
And John, some of the most vulnerable people that we speak with at the office are those individuals that cannot work for medical reasons, and all they want is some of the benefits that they had already paid for to come in so that they can meet their financial obligations, so they can pay their mortgage, they can buy food and put it on the table. Those are individuals that are in difficult situations, and unfortunately, we see every day insurance companies not making it better. Even though it's the insurance company's responsibility to make sure that they pay you those benefits. If you signed up for long-term or short-term disability, they should be paying you those benefits so you can continue living while you're not working. But too often, those insurance companies don't do that. They put obstacles in the way. They deny disability benefits for reasons that don't make sense, or they cut off people from benefits prematurely and tell them to just go back to work when these individuals cannot work. My heart always breaks for these individuals. They're in a very difficult situation, but the good news is we've said enough is enough. We have a whole team at the office dedicated just to help these people, to make sure that the insurance company pays benefits, so that these people have the money that they need and deserve to continue living. So important. If you've been cut off disability benefits, denied disability benefits, obstacles are being put in your way, so you're not sure if you're going to qualify for these disability benefits, let's connect. We have a whole team that are fantastic. Their job is to make sure you get those benefits, you get them quickly, so you can continue living. That's why I'm very proud of our disability team, helping people in very difficult situations every single day.
And as we mentioned, Lior, we always like to get to a viewer phone call for this portion as well, this segment of the show. So let's do that right now. Listen up.
My sister was involved in a pretty bad hit and run a few days ago. She was knocked unconscious and had to be rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. She suffered a major brain injury and broke her left leg. We're completely in the dark here and don't know what to do or where to turn to first. What should we do?
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, wow is exactly the only term you can use here. And, when I talk about vulnerable individuals, that is an example right there. And there's a lot of things that someone in this situation has to deal with. Your doctor to make sure that you get properly assessed. Your employer that needs to know what's happening. You may have to deal with an insurance policy, an insurance provider with respect to short-term disability, long-term disability. You may have to deal with EI. There's so many avenues that have to be pursued. By the way, your own insurance company, you may have entitlements through your motor vehicle insurance company, even if it's a hit and run as a pedestrian. And an individual in that situation or their family has to navigate all those things. Well, that's why we're here. We know how to navigate that system. We know how to deal with the employer, with the insurance company, with the house insurance, with the car insurance, disability insurance, and with the government. So rather than you try to figure out piecemeal what to do, let us do our job. Let us deal with all these individuals so you can qualify for what you're owed, so that you have the financial means to continue living, so that your job remains on hold for you while you're recovering, so that your doctor has the right information. That's why to try to do this on your own, not a good idea, not advisable. We have people that will guide you through it and take that responsibilities off your shoulder, your family's shoulders. So if you've been injured, then you can't work. If you're unable to work for any medical reasons, connect with us and let us do what we do.
Well said. As always, Lior, I want to follow that up and keep going with an email here. Same topic. What does it mean when your long-term disability is denied because you're not totally disabled? And why is it so confusing?
Well, it's confusing, John, because an insurance company wants to make it confusing so that you kind of give up and you assume, well, if the insurance company says something, then it must be right. Generally, the idea of being totally disabled, the idea is that you cannot do the main functions of your job, okay? And that's a legal term that an insurance company uses per the insurance policies. You can't perform the main job duties of your job for medical reasons, whether it's a physical ailment or a mental health disabilities. Oftentimes, though, an insurance company is going to say, well, we don't believe that you're totally disabled. You must be able to do something. Well, that's despite you knowing that that's not true, and your doctor saying, no, you can't do your job. The insurance company simply may say, oh, you just don't meet the definition. Or, well, they said I don't meet the definition. They must know. Nonsense. It's as simple as, can you work? If you can work, okay, you should be working. If you cannot work and you have a disability plan, they should be paying you those benefits until you are able to work, especially if you have your doctor's support. So if your insurance company says you don't meet the definition, not so fast. Let's talk about it. Once they hear from us, all of a sudden, that insurance company changes their mind. Okay, fine, you do meet the definition. So let's talk about it. Let's make sure that you're not being taken advantage of by an insurance company when they should be paying you benefits.
Lior, we'll get into one more short break here, then we'll slide back over to employment law and one more viewer phone call as we continue the last bit of the show right here. Ask a Lawyer on CP24. We're coming right back.
Lost your job? Disability denied? Ask a Lawyer is here for you. Each week, experts from EmploymentLawyer.ca answer your questions. Visit cp24.com/askalawyer and watch Mondays and Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on CP24.
I was fired shortly after asking for time off to handle some health issues. Severance was only 2 weeks' pay after 3 years with the company. They claimed it was the best they could do because I was technically a contractor. What am I really owed? I'm 48 and was earning $80,000 as a consultant.
What do you think, Lior?
John, this person was misclassified. They're not a consultant. They're an employee. And you also cannot be let go because of your medical condition. Full severance has to be paid here. Let's go once more to the severance calculator at pocketemploymentlawyer.ca, and let's see how much this person should be getting. So we know that this person's been there for 3 years. He's 48 years of age. Severance, 2 weeks, nonsense. You see on your screen that he's owed 4 to 6 months of severance. That's how much he's owed. Check out yourself, pocketemploymentlawyer.ca.
Smart move reaching out. We are out of time for the week. Thank you so much for joining us. It is ask@employmentlawyer.ca or use that phone number, 1-855-821-5900. We'll see you next time right here.